Welcome, welcome, welcome. Live on a Friday night. So, I decided not to go outside. Have you been outside? If you're on Cape Cod, it's like in the 30s, low 30s. It's like, forget it. I thought about going outside to do this on location, and I said, forget it. The funny thing is, I forgot to put my title up at the top. So, up there's nothing. It's the In My Footsteps podcast without a map, is what I call it. If you see me keep looking down, this is what I'm drinking tonight. Kombucha tea. It's good for your digestion, if anyone's interested. This is a good brand. A friend of mine that's a trainer, also, she handed it off to me. So this is ginger lemon. If you're into it, it's good. If you're not, I totally get it. So, for anyone that's never been a part of one of these live streams, this is a little more in-depth discussion of my podcast, the In My Footsteps podcast, which is New England history, travel, lifestyle, nostalgia, 80s nostalgia. I'm a child of the 80s. So, on the podcast, I keep it very, not regimented, but sort of, I get to the point. Intro, here's segment A, B, C, D. This is more interactive. I like to have people, if anyone wants to comment, chat. I try to pay attention to the chat and give waves to people as they come in. And the irony is that this week there is no new podcast. So it's not that this is irrelevant, but the podcast is normally Thursdays. It gets released, and I do 3 weeks on and 1 week off. So I try to get one after another, and then this is kind of the reset week where I set up the next 3. The last episode was episode 14, and that was, God, I'm trying to remember what was on that one. Anyone out there remember? But episode 14 was an introduction to photography with my buddy Steve Drozel, who's a professional photographer. I don't know if he might pop up in the chat. And a little bit about why running is a great cardio exercise, and it can also be fun. I even put it there. No, really, it can be, I swear. But next Thursday, I have another episode, 15. And that's going to be a celebration of life of my Nina, who, Rosemary Sullivan, she passed away March 23rd. And so I talk a little bit about her, but it's more than just her. It's about love and loss. And for anyone out there, hopefully everyone's had grandparents that have been alive when you're alive. But, hopefully it'll bring back memories of what it was like when you had grandparents, or it'll make you appreciate the ones you do have. I was lucky enough that I had, so my Grandpa Johnny on my father's side, he passed away before I was born, but my other 3 grandparents, actually, they all lived until I was 32 years old, and I had 3 grandparents, so I was kind of spoiled. But we talk a little bit about her, and then I spaced these out, but I actually, ironically, one of the retro segments on the podcast, episode 15, is going to be talking about the death of Kurt Cobain, which will be, he died on the 5th of April, but they found his body on the 8th, and the 8th is when the podcast drops, so I decided to go talk about that. It's kind of the day that grunge music died. I don't know if you're watching this later, this will be up on IGTV. I throw it up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. But if anyone's watching now or watching later, hi Jen, I see you there. But if anyone watches now or later and remembers where they were, this is April 8th, 1994. So, that's a long time ago. But I swear I have the celebration of life of my Nina and the story about the death of Kurt Cobain. They're split on the podcast. They're not one after another. I said, holy God, this is going to be a depressing podcast to try to share with people, that it's all about death. But it's not really, I swear. And then I'm also going to do a road trip to Block Island, which is just off the coast of Rhode Island. Anyone familiar with New England, it's one of the big islands. Like Cape Cod has Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket. There's Desert Island up in Maine. And Block Island's, I guess it would be like the fourth best. But I go there. And with the road trips, I share things to do, things to see. So that if anyone, now that things have finally seemed to loosen up where you can start to travel again, maybe people can go to these places. I know I'm going this week actually into Rhode Island. It's the first time I've been out of the state in 13 months, but luckily I'm fully vaccinated, so I got to remember to bring my little card with me. So since I don't have a new podcast this week, I figured I would talk a little bit about the journey of like what's led up to episode 15. So in September, this was where this idea came from, to do a podcast. Kind of, I'm not a natural. I never was a natural public speaker. I was very shy and introverted as a kid and all the way up through part of my adulthood. But when I became a writer and I had to start doing book events, that forced me to become a public speaker. And people that have known me a long time say they can't believe me now. I'm the same person I was then. And I find that anyone can be a public speaker if you believe in and are passionate about what you're talking about. So that's why I said, what do I like to talk about? What do I know about? And that's where New England, my home, and Cape Cod, and travel and history, and then retro nostalgia. I love all 80s stuff. I'm a child of the 80s, so, So when people come into the chat, this is going to be funny if something goes wrong here. But I keep trying to, there's a little button that says wave so that people know that even though I'm just going on and on, that I notice when you're coming in. I have this setup where my phone is on this little tripod that's got these flexible legs, and I've got it propped up, so I have to be gentle because at some point I'm going to hit it. Normally when I'm in my car, it's much more firm. I could smack the phone and it'll be fine, but I'm going to end up knocking this over, and it's going to be pretty funny to see. And as I said, I got my kombucha tea. That's my drink of choice tonight. Last week it was CBD seltzer. And the reason that I'm drinking stuff like this is that yesterday, April Fool's Day. Hi, Lulu. I see you there. My sister just popped in. But the reason that I'm drinking kombucha tea, CBD seltzer, is yesterday, April Fool's Day, was actually my 200th day without a drink. And this all ties in. As much as this is a free-flowing kind of chat or interaction, sometimes it may seem like I'm just going way off the beaten path, but I'm not. The whole thing with giving up drinking came from, at some points you don't realize that you're doing something kind of detrimental to yourself until it's, way, way far down the line. And in September, I decided to give it up. I'm going to talk about it a lot in a future podcast episode and kind of explain it, because I'm not anti-drinking. I'm not one of those people that drank a lot and then stopped and then said, oh, all you people that drink, you're terrible. No. I look at me and I wish I could go out to a bar or a club and have a few drinks one night and then that was it. But it's not. It's like a gateway every time. So I'm just better off without it. But this podcast and everything from it all stems from when I stopped drinking. It was like my brain dried out. It was a beer sponge or a liquor sponge for a couple of years. And it finally got better. But I started the podcast in November. And I was doing every other week because I was working a terrible, toxic job that I don't want to speak ill of the place I used to work at. But I was trying to manage my workload. And then once I realized I could handle it, I was doing 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So this is for anyone that's never heard of the podcast, never listened to an episode or seen any of the videos I've put up on YouTube. Just trying to give you some of the hits I'm going to actually talk about. So I try to do a lot of fun, like history is a subject that is hit or miss. You either like it or you don't really. I find that, I don't know. It's like some people love science, chemistry, biology. It put me to sleep. So I started the very first episode talking about my ninth great grandfather, Deacon John Doan, who was someone that came over on one of the ships after the Mayflower, and he helped settle the town of Eastham on Cape Cod. The reason that he's someone that I talk about a lot is because when I do my book events, and it's actually in all of my books, I've got a sixth book coming out in May. All the books say I'm a 12th generation Cape Codder, and I need to have proof in case someone calls me on that and says, well, how do you know? Well, Deacon John Doan is my ninth great grandfather, and there you go. So I tell his story in episode 1. I talk about some of my favorite stories, like Billingsgate Island, which is considered Cape Cod's Atlantis, which was an island that existed in Cape Cod Bay off of Wellfleet, but because of erosion, it wiped it off the map. I talk about funnier stuff like Bradley's, the history of Bradley's, or Thompson's Clam Bar. If any of you are from Cape Cod, or if you visited anytime between the 50s and the 90s, you would have likely heard of Thompson's Clam Bar. And then there's other fun ones. There's Lost Lighthouse. Mayo Beach in Wellfleet had a lighthouse that got bought and dismantled, and people thought it was just gone, wiped off the map. And God, I think it was 80 years later, they found it out in California. Someone had bought it, shipped it out there, and reassembled it and renamed it. And it's a fascinating story, at least to me. I try to make it fun, but obviously I know if you don't like history, so that's why I'm trying to make the podcast more all-encompassing so that there's something in it that everyone will like. If you don't like the history stuff, you might like the travel. So far, I'm just doing New England. So I've talked about Chatham down on the Cape, Stockbridge, Mass, Stowe, Vermont, York, Maine. Well, it's Lincoln, New Hampshire. It's pretty good. I call this without a map because I don't have notes. So I'm having to think of everything from 14 episodes of the podcast. Just, I guess it shows that I don't have dementia yet. But, that's always a yet. But then if you don't like the road trips, I do the 80s nostalgia. It's not all 80s, but it's a lot of 80s. And stuff from my childhood. I tell embarrassing stories. So my sister Lindsay is in the chat. She knows the story. I tell this one a lot because it's just funny. We used to play a game growing up called Manhunt. All it is hide and seek in the dark. You wait till it gets dark in the summer when it's warm. And we would play in our whole neighborhood. It was a different time then. And I was always the seeker. And I had a Jason mask, Friday the 13th, the hockey mask. And it glowed in the dark. But I made it up like Jason. And I would be the one to go, you got like a 5-minute head start. And then I had to come find you. But when I caught you, it wasn't just that I caught you. I killed you like in a movie. And so being 9, 10, 11 years old, I think I may have been 12 or 13 at the most. You get scared in the dark, alone, hiding and waiting. And I made it, nice and suspenseful. So there's 2 great stories from this. First one, there was a girl. She was probably 9 years old. And she was terrified, but she wanted to play with all of us. We'd have 10 to 12 people playing at some points, but she was scared. And so basically we wanted to make her feel safe. So we gave her a golf club that she clutched it to her like a weapon. And I'm going around finding everyone, and I see her in this front yard, and I sneak up on her and, grab her like, oh, I got you. You've been killed. And she freaked out so bad, she turned around and swung the golf club, hit me right between the eyes of the mask, and just dropped me. And I still have the mask, and it's got a crack from eye to eye. So that's one. And the other one is even more embarrassing, which I never thought I'd be sharing these stories, but I guess, hey, they're funny and everyone can, well, you can't relate if it hasn't happened to you, but so we were doing another game. And a buddy of mine named Matt, he always wanted to also be the seeker. And I'd say, no, you're not wearing my Jason mask. I'm the only seeker. But one time I felt kind of bad. So I also, because I'm a horror fan, I had the Freddy Krueger glove. And I gave him, I don't know if I had a fedora or not. So he was Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. And I was Jason. And we both went. And we were playing hide and seek, manhunt. And the big twist was at the end, we were in our backyard with the spotlight on, and we came together like we were going to have the big Freddy versus Jason battle. And all the rest of the kids that played were surrounding us. It was like a gang fight. And we went at each other, and we must have grappled for 5 seconds before I slipped in my dog's poop and fell. We both fell in it, and it was just... Game was over after that. Literally slipped and fell and rolled in it. Oh my God. But that's one of those things I tell stories like that. I mean, Manhunt was great. I tell stuff about like actual things like the beginnings of Nickelodeon and when Nintendo first came out. So it's actual things from the 80s. But then it's also stories that I like to share from when I was, people are laughing at me. Yeah, it's a good one. I like telling that one because sometimes it's a new audience and they haven't heard it. And it's just like, ugh. And each time it gets better. I'm going to have sound effects of me splatting. So, like I said, episode 15 is coming out next Thursday. And it's going to be the celebration of life for my Nina. We're going to have the story of the day that grunge died, the end when Kurt Cobain died. In the middle, there's going to be Block Island as far as travel. And then I've got more stuff coming, but these are all of the podcasts. The bottom line is I try to make them interesting for everyone. I've been starting incorporating more lifestyle topics. And lifestyle is such a broad term that technically travel stuff is considered lifestyle. So I was already kind of doing it. But that's where I'm going to do the story about kind of how I gave up drinking. That has nothing to do with travel or history. But it's just, I find that at my age now, I'm 43 years old. I've got a lot of stories that are just life. And a lot of people can relate to them. And some people might get inspiration or motivation from them. That's when I did episode 14 with the story about how I got back into running. After, God, it was freshman year of high school, I stopped running because I just didn't want to. And in my early 30s, I got back into it. And it's something where people hear running and they say, oh, God, my knees, my ankles, my back, I don't want to do that. And I try to kind of explain how I got back into it because that's how I felt. I said, I don't want to run. I get hurt all the time. But you don't have to run a marathon or a half marathon or any of that stuff. It's just great for your heart. I lost 40 pounds doing it. So I wish I had the photo. I've gotten pretty good at pulling photos up on my phone, but I had a before and after photo from 2010 and 2011, one where I looked like a refrigerator and the other one where it looked like someone had stretched me out. And that was just from running. And obviously, as I go, I've wanted for a long time to do a question and answer segment. Some of my favorite podcasts, they have listener questions. And so I've wanted to have that, but, it's a matter of interest. Like I've said, this is my kombucha tea. I keep feeling like I'm advertising for these people, and they don't know. Last week I had Race Point Seltzer, which is a CBD seltzer, and I tagged them in my story that I was going to be featuring it on my live stream last week, and they were late to the party. It was after I was already done. I said I was on there for 40 minutes, and I told you, I gave you a heads up. I kept promoting it. I kept putting it right up to the camera. So, oh, my nephew Liam is in the chat. I see, at least that you're typing there. I got a funny story for you, Liam. All right. So, everyone, so I'm a personal trainer in addition to all the other stuff. But COVID has been a pain in the ass, and it's been hard until the last few weeks. It was hard to get to the gym, and you stress eat. And the first several months, I was just drinking to cope with stress and a bad job and worrying about everything. But anyway, so the idea here is, sadly, on Monday, we're having the funeral for my Nina. And so I wanted to find clothes that I haven't had to dress up since my grandpa's funeral. That was 2 years ago. So I went and I have like 3 or 4 pairs of dress pants, and the ones that I wore to my grandpa's funeral 2 years ago don't fit anymore. And it's not because they're too big. So I said, oh man. So I had to go get a new pair of nice like black khaki pants to go with the white dress shirt. So I went to Marshall's and I said, all right, I'm going to go up 2 waist sizes. I said, that'll give me enough room that they'll be fine. And I'm looking around, and the only ones I could find were another size up. So these are, even though they're going to be loose, they're 3 sizes bigger than the ones I had 2 years ago. And I was carrying them around Marshall's like, oh man, maybe I can just fake it at the funeral and just I wear track pants a lot because that's what I wear when I train people. They look like stuff you'd wear at the gym. They got like zip up sides, but oh my, nothing will sober you up faster than trying on clothes that now don't fit. I mean, I've been going hard at the gym, but I need more time. So yeah, there's the fun and excitement about finding out that you need to drop some weight. The COVID-15, that's legit. That's very real. That's going to be one of my pitches when I start adding more clients to train. I'll help you if you help me. So speaking of that, I'm actually in the process of getting a new certification to go along. I'm a certified personal trainer. That's my title. But I'm always looking for continuing education. So I'm starting this month. I'm getting a certification in medical training, medical fitness specialist. That's it. Essentially, I'll be able to work with people with chronic illnesses, things like people that have had cancer or anything with tobacco related, even like people that have been non-active, which really is great because look at COVID. You're talking 13 months maybe, that everything's been kind of shut down. So there's a lot of people that need that jump back in. I've been telling people it's like you go to physical therapy. I'm similar to that. But I don't even know what it means. It just looked like it was cool. I said, that's going to be nice because I've been training people for 5 years, and it's been like, I'll take all comers. I trained a guy for Spartan races where I was having him climb ropes and I was just torturing him. Torturing. Don't clip that part and play that where I'm torturing people. I had clients as old as 85. But what I found now, dealing with my grandparents and now a lot of like my parents and aunts and uncles and that, they're all getting up there in age. I don't hope my mom doesn't see this, but So what I want in my training is to give people the best quality of life possible. So I'm not looking to train people for athletics anymore. I don't want to train you for a race. I don't want to train you for bodybuilding. I want to give it so that when you get into your 60s, 70s, 80s, hopefully 90s, I either train you and help you in that way, or I give you the tools so that you can do it yourself. That's even better. Like if you graduate, where I kind of say, you don't need me anymore. I actually enjoyed that because it means I did my job. But yeah, so I'm starting to do that course sometime this month. I don't know if anyone out there, if you're from the Cape, if you've dealt with any of the snow out. Has it been snowing outside tonight? It was too cold. So what I've been doing, this is my 6th live stream, because I've been doing marketing for the podcast, finding ways to get more eyes and ears on it. It would help if I had a logo on the screen or something. Oh, this will be the part when I knock the phone over. The funny thing is that I'm swiping through my photos, and you can't see the photos. All you can see is me looking at you, moving my hand. I found that out when I watched one of these live streams back, because, hey, you can't even tell. I'm finding my logo so I can stick it on the screen. There, oh, geez, it's huge. Well, that doesn't really help. Well, it's supposed to be Cape Cod and New England. Wow, that's way bigger than I expected on the screen. Ay, ay, ay. It's only my 6th live stream. Essentially, though, what I try to do is, it's like explaining a little more. It's like teasers, not so much, I guess, so that like you can find this anywhere. You can find it. I've been promoting mostly Apple Podcasts. That's where I get about half of my downloads. But it's Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, Amazon, all that stuff. Let me yank that down. That looks just god awful. Just because it's stretched beyond the screen. But each podcast is less than an hour. I've been trying to keep it that way because it's easier to digest. I don't want to have a podcast so long that you feel the need to pause it and go do something else and come back. I want it to be like one bite. And so these live streams are another way to interact, because I post a lot of stories and stuff about the podcast on Instagram. But if you don't see it, or if they don't let me put links in the stories, so I'm trying to make it so you don't have to do homework. Like, here, go look at it somewhere. Like that. I'm trying. But so it's every 3 weeks on, 1 week off is basically what I do. And I do all the research. I do all the marketing and such. But I'm also on YouTube. Like this live stream, I will get done. I'll put it up on IGTV. And then I download it. I put it on YouTube with chapters in it, so that, because I can tend to ramble, because I'll be talking and I'll get another idea, and I'm like a dog that sees a squirrel. So I go off there. So I don't want people to have to sift through 35 minutes or something of me yakking to find something important. So I put chapters in it so you can skip around to whatever nonsense I'm talking about. So I'm glad to see a lot of people in here. This is one where sometimes I always do the waves, but I'm terrified. I have my camera on this little flexible tripod, and all I keep thinking of is I'm going to start typing and it's just going to go falling over. So that's why I'm not more engaged typing on there. But hopefully, if you've never heard of the podcast, you go check it out. I'm trying to think of one that would be a good starter. I mean, my first episode is my most downloaded, I guess because it's the oldest. And that's got Deacon John Doan on it, which is my 9th grade grandfather. I've got a few interviews. I interviewed a friend of mine, Kaylin Orr, who's a personal trainer. about getting fit in the new year. That's a good one. I interviewed my sister Kate, who she just started her own business called Wear Your Wish. It's clothing and apparel, and she's got a lot of stuff coming out. She's actually, I think she's sold out a lot of her stuff, but she's at wearyourwishes.com. And so that I interviewed her about her journey from being a single mother struggling to having this incredible business opportunity that she's knocking out of the park. I interviewed two of my nieces, Kaylee and Emma, about dealing with the COVID pandemic while in college. And it was fun to talk to them, even if it was via Zoom. And then, like I told you, there's all the road trips. There's the 80s nostalgia. I don't know if anyone else out there is a nostalgia fan. I've got some good ones that are coming up. I have, so I'll spoil. Well, actually, it'll be coming up. I'm doing one about sleepover stories. So, I don't want to spoil too much of that because then you won't listen to it. But I picked my 4 favorite sleepover stories. So think about it, when you're a kid and you had people sleep over. There's always funny stories that come from that. So, I was sleeping over. I'm not going to name names because, Lindsay, you'd know who they were. But it's also, you just never know who might know them. So I had a friend of mine. The two of us slept over at another friend's house. So we'll just leave it at that right now. And I was sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag. My other friend was on the couch. And the friend whose house it was, he slept in his bedroom. He was like, the hell with you guys. So we slept with the TV on. And in the middle of the night, I'm asleep on the sleeping bag looking at the TV. And this is 100% true. I couldn't make this up if I tried. The kid whose house we were sleeping over, he had 2 dogs. One was a big, shaggy, I don't know if it was an Akita, but the other one was a poodle. The poodle walked in between me and the TV. I'm talking, a few feet away. And he proceeds to just start pooping on the rug 2 feet from my face as I'm laying there with my pillow. And it's like, what do you do? Scream at the dog? And then he runs and tracks it all over you. So what I did was I rolled over and faced the other way and pretended I never even saw it. But it was right in front of me. I said, oh my God, this is like a nightmare. Needless to say, I never slept over at that kid's house ever again. But yeah, it's 100% true, Lindsay. I'll tell you who it was. I don't want to name names. That's like when I have to watch myself when I do these live streams because I start talking about events that are going on. Like I've mentioned that I recently left a job I was working at because it was a very toxic environment, but I also wanted to focus more on the podcast and now my new certification in fitness. And I have to watch myself because I want to start saying things and naming names of people, and I'm like, no, don't, because you never know. That's one of those, you got to be smart. Because doing a live stream, there's no net. That's the funny thing, is that I always have trouble getting these things started where I won't go live exactly at 8, but at least during it seems like it goes well. I don't know how many of you do your own live streams or watch other people's. I don't know how they go. With me, it's literally just talking about the podcast for a lot of it, but that spawns other stuff where then I'll start to branch off into other random things. Like the story about getting the pants that were I had to get that were bigger. But hopefully, I don't know if any of you have ever checked out the podcast, or on YouTube I do segments of the podcast that end up as kind of visual parts. What did I do the last time? I did the segment about, I used to have a Fisher-Price phonograph and I had actual vinyl albums when I was a kid. I'm talking between 6 and 8 years old. And I explained about the albums that I used to have And on YouTube, I actually used the album covers. I was a little metalhead. I don't know how I heard Rat or Quiet Riot or Twisted Sister. I don't know. And I obviously didn't have the money to buy these albums. So that means that my parents obviously bought me. I don't know if anyone's ever seen Quiet Riot, the album cover. There's a guy that's in a straitjacket with this metal mask and like one big eye. And it scared the hell out of me. So I loved the music, but I would have to have the album face down because I didn't want to see it. And I keep coming back to, I was maybe 7, and I must have gone to my mother and said, I want Quiet Riot. And she saw this album with this crazy guy on the cover and said, yeah, my 7-year-old son can listen to that. But yeah, so that one's up on YouTube. I do all kinds of stuff. I do a blog that I write, but that's similar with the Cape Cod and New England history. And as we get further along, I have a book coming out in May, my 6th book. I think I can actually pull up the cover for you. There it is. Beautiful. So that's the book cover. I'm going to be able to share it soon. I mean, I don't think they'd get too mad if I share it now. It ends my trilogy of Cape Cod history. So iconic hotels and motels. I did Cape Cod Nights, which was historic nightclubs and bars. And I did the historic restaurants of Cape Cod. And the whole marketing campaign was the restaurants, nightclubs, and motels. So it's where you eat, where you went to drink and party, and then where you went to sleep off your hangover. And that's how I marketed that to the publisher. And they loved it. That's how this book came to be. I said, we need to have that because of this, this, and this. And they loved it. We'll see. All of my events that I've scheduled for that are all virtual so far. There's no face-to-face. That's less pressure. Because then I can have notes down in front of me. Like I could put them down there. And if it gets real bad, I can just put a fake face up there. Like my screen is frozen. And just go with that. So hopefully you check the podcast out. Let me know what you think. If you go there, it's, like I said, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Pandora, Stitcher, Spotify. It's In My Footsteps podcast. I've used the In My Footsteps name for about 11 years. That's when I started my blog. It was 11 years ago. And episode 15 will come out this next Thursday with the celebration of life for my Nina. That's going to be pretty good. I found a jazz song that I think she would have liked, so that's layered throughout it. Normally this would be the part of the live stream where I would show you where I'm at. I've been doing these outside. I've gone to places and said, here's a beach or here's, something, but it was too cold. I'm soft. I'm an old man now. I'm soft. I don't want to go sit out in the cold. And besides, it's dark, so you wouldn't see anything. You'd see darkness. I could have told you I was in Paris. I could still say it. I'm in Paris right now. That's where it is. It's just very quiet. But thank you, everyone, for coming over, joining in this live stream. Before I go, so I usually end up asking this after, and I thank God I remembered, but what times, if you were to watch a live stream, what time normally do you think that most people would be on? I keep looking for different times to make sure it gives the most amount of eyes to be on it. Friday at 8 kind of worked. I've heard people say Saturdays later are good, Sunday afternoons, but I don't want to have it where I constantly change when it is, because that's what I've heard, pick a schedule and stick with it. That's why with the podcast, I've heard other days are better to release it than Thursday, but I'm like, it's too late. I've released 14 episodes on a Thursday, so we're sticking with it. But yeah, you can obviously shoot me a message if there's other times you've thought of that are better. But otherwise, I'm going to try this again next Friday at 8. We'll actually have a new episode to talk about. Maybe I'll be outside because hopefully it'll be warmer. And I'll bring a flashlight so then I can show you where I am, even if it's the woods. But thanks, everybody, for coming on over to my without a map number 6. There's no title up there, so you can't tell it. Now the 5 p.m. was all right. There's more people for the 8 o'clock than when I was doing Fridays at 5. And 8 is a little better, but who knows? I'll every now and then I'll go on Instagram and I'll click on the live thing and it'll tell you how many people that follow you are on currently. But I never want, if I see like, ooh, that's a lot of people, I'm not going to just suddenly go live. I actually prepare and think about things to say because I don't have notes. But I'll be back Friday, 8 o'clock, hopefully outside. Hopefully it won't be 35 degrees in April again, but it's Cape Cod in spring. Gotta love it. So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay warm. And I'll talk to you guys again sooner than later.